So today's lesson we'll be looking at the theme of courage. So courage can be defined as the ability to do something that frightens someone. It can be seen as facing extreme danger using bravery. And something that is probably the most courageous act in this text is considering that at the end, Rook risks his own fate and his own life for others. So that's a really interesting thing to consider. Why would Rook do this? Why would anybody risk their life for someone else who's not their family? So it's an interesting conundrum to look at. In terms of supporting evidence around courage in the text, the most obvious event is Rook confronting the governor. We know that he risked his life to convey his true thoughts, to stand up for the Cardigal people, and to really defend those relationships that he built across the text. Now, courage in terms of other characters, we could look at the hanging of the lieutenant for mutiny. Now, this lieutenant who was on board the Resolution was obviously trying to overthrow the leadership on board. And it really exemplifies that courage may have a price to pay. So we don't know too much about that incident. However, what we do know is that at times, standing up for what you believe in has an ultimate price, and that could be your life. A different type of courage, so making those first points of contact with natives. And that courage can go both ways. That can be Rook's courage for reaching out to the natives, but also the courage of the natives to approach Rook. The unknown intent of each party leaves everyone vulnerable. The natives didn't know if Rook was going to be violent. Rook didn't know if the natives were going to be violent towards him. So both parties in that situation had to have courage in order to begin these relationships. There's a series of quotes on the left that relate to courage. They're not specifically linked to all of the events, but it could be a point where you would like to go and investigate those quotes further. Again, looking at how to unpack an essay topic, making sure that you have the topic written out at the top, you have a clear contention as to what you are going to write about in the essay, and that you have your 3-paragraph topic sentence and the examples that you are going to use. Make sure that you do have quotes in these plans. The more that you can plan for quotes now, the easier your revision will be down the track. Because when you're at home revising before the SAC and you're looking at all these key events, you'll then have the matching quotes that you need to revise. So you're not just revising a list of quotes that are meaningless and disconnected from any of the events. Today's first practice topic will be The Lieutenant is a novel about overcoming the unfamiliar. Now, the first thing that you would need to do in order to unpack this essay topic is to look at the key words. So is it a novel about overcoming the unfamiliar? And to unpack an essay topic, I start asking myself questions. I go, okay, well, who overcame something? And what types of things were unfamiliar? So I start going, okay, unfamiliar surroundings, unfamiliar relationships, unfamiliar feelings. And suddenly I've got a few subheadings. I'm like, right, I'm going to do a paragraph about unfamiliar feelings. I'm going to do a paragraph about unfamiliar environments. I'm going to do a paragraph about unfamiliar relationships. And then from those headings, I'll find the examples. Sometimes the other approach is to think about the examples. Like, okay, well, Rook did this. or Gardner did that, and then I work the idea backwards. So sometimes that can be an easier approach if you know more about the events. The other theme we're looking at today is morality. Yeah, our text definitely centers around this theme quite strongly. In terms of morality, it is that distinction of knowing right and wrong. As a child, Rook has a developing moral compass. And like most people, later in life, that moral compass becomes a little bit more defined. So knowing what is the right thing to do. And different people debate on what is right and what is wrong. Rook later begins to question the immoral actions of his companions, whereas he didn't do that in his earlier career in the Marines. Another character of interest is Gardner, and his morality and his regrets about the mistreatment of the Indigenous. On the other hand, you also might want to think about people who were immoral in the text. So you could look at someone like Brogden, who's quite harsh. You could look at Governor Gilbert and the way he delivers orders and delivers punishment. You could also look at Silk and his intentions and the fact that he's willing to do whatever the governor asks of him. All of those people you can look at and contrast against each other as moral and immoral. And sometimes it might not always be black and white. Sometimes there's a bit of grey area as well. Some of the supporting evidence you might want to talk about. In terms of morality, Gardner and his regrets at capturing the natives obviously shows great remorse, and it humanises the natives in a manner that other men have not. Again, in terms of right and wrong, Rook's decision to warn Tagaran of the impending attack on her people. Rook in this situation overcomes his sense of duty, and his morality prevails and decides to save the Indigenous people. Really, Rook could have made the easy decision, which was to do nothing, but instead he makes the right decision, which is the moral and also the courageous one. Looking towards the end of the novel, Rook's decision to devote the rest of his life to freeing slaves in Antigua can show that he is willing to spend his final days committing moral and ethical act of ending racial inequality. So he really does devote his time to something that is a really good cause and is the right thing to be doing. Again, you can choose to contrast this against the people who are immoral in the text. So Silk, Governor Gilbert, Brogden, Surgeon Waymark, and their actions. This is the other essay topic that we'll be unpacking today. And it asks, how does the novel endorse the values of reliability, faithfulness, and honour? You know, when given an essay question like this, one way that you can unpack it would be to make sure that you cover each of those three values. So you could write a paragraph on reliability, you could write a paragraph on faithfulness, and you could write a paragraph on honour, and make sure that you understood the difference between those three concepts. That would probably be the easiest way to do it. Alternatively, you could organise it by character or by significant ideas, but I think that that would be the way that I would go about it in the first instance.